Surviving R. Kelly, Lifetime's riveting documentary chronicling tales of survivors of alleged sexual abuse at the hands of the singer. It continues to dominate conversations in the entertainment industry. Today, we've invited pop culture expert Quentin Latham, aka Funky Dineva, and our resident legal expert, Sue Ann Robinson, for a roundtable discussion about the long-reaching impacts of surviving R. Kelly. Thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to look at this from two different perspectives. Quentin, I want you to look at it from the perspective of the public opinion.
Okay.
And you from the victims and their families and from a legal perspective.
Right.
What are the impacts of this documentary moving forward?
I think right now the impact of the documentary is that it's starting the conversation, and then obviously it's even starting an investigation in Atlanta and Chicago. I mean, legally speaking, the issue is if you don't have victims, you don't have a case. And so that's why you see in Chicago and Atlanta, they're coming out and saying, please come forward. If you're a victim or if you're a witness to something, come forward. Because every state has a different statute of limitations on sexual abuse and sexual assault. So even if they can't pursue a case in Chicago, they might be something that's viable in Atlanta. So I think now the main thing to do is to focus on what can be done legally, because he is being tried in the court of public opinion. The court of public opinion is attempting to do something that the court system wasn't able to do. And so, that's where we are right now.
And what are your thoughts?
I think socially we've got a lot going on. So for one, we're balancing the outrage, right? R. Kelly is Mr. I Believe I Can Fly, so on and so forth. So we got the outrage.
Step in the name of
love. Exactly, which is played on like every family reunion, every cruise, every white linen party.
Right.
But then we've also got the mourning of his music. I don't know about you, but R. Kelly's music was the soundtrack of my adolescence and honestly the underscore to a lot of my first, if you get what I'm saying.
Right.
And so it's like balancing the outrage, balancing the music, and then like you said, the conversation that's being started, the value placed on the lives of these victims versus the gratification that we get from listening to his music. It's hard for a lot of people to balance it, but it's just weird.
And even with Aaliyah's family, I think there's a mourning in terms of her legacy, because the part of what the movie does is it chronicles her relationship with R. Kelly, obviously. And I think her family is, obviously they're denying the things that were said in the movie, but then there's a part of us that is saying, well, if we're not going to accept this part about Aaliyah because she has this legacy and she's held to such a high standard, then can we accept the rest? So I think, I personally was mourning Aaliyah and her music and her legacy and watching the movie because...
Speaking of that,
yeah,
I want to ask a real question.
Yes.
Okay. Given what we all knew or at least believed to be true with regards to him and Aaliyah and her being underage at the time,
right,
and then going into the sex tape, are we, the public, to blame? Did we let this happen?
See, here's the thing. We knew, but we didn't know.
There were like breadcrumbs.
It's like we knew, but we didn't know. And I can remember being in college when that sex tape dropped. Like, we threw a party at my house and was eating, and like we were eating it up.
Okay.
And as an adult now, I look back at it and I'm like, oh my God, why wasn't I outraged?
Right.
Granted, I was 17 years old at the time. But here's the thing. I think myself and much of the public was under the impression that somebody else would handle it. That's somebody else's responsibility.
The court
would handle it. The police would handle it. The FBI. And it's all right for me to indulge because somebody else is going to handle it.
Okay.
And Common said recently that the Black community let the victims down. Do you think that's true?
I think to a certain extent, people did turn a blind eye to his issues because his music was so prolific, because people believed in his talent, because people wanted to believe the image that was presented of him and not the things that they were actually seeing. So I think to a certain extent, definitely people, he had enablers. You have to have a system to fly in underage women. You have to have somebody to book them into a hotel. You have to have somebody to feed them. You have to have a whole system to do those things. So I think there were definitely people involved that were enabling. Like now what we're seeing with the protests and stuff like that, I think if that was happening then, it would be a different situation today. I think after the sex tape comes out, if you're still taking your adolescent daughter to the studio or to a meeting with R. Kelly after the video has come out, then you are in part to blame.
So what does this say about the music industry? Because there were so many insiders that supposedly knew about the situation What does this say about them?
Well, it says what it's always said. It is about the almighty dollar. And much like the Black community, the music industry is able to compartmentalize the negative aspects and hold on to the things that benefit them. You know, piggybacking quickly off of what Sue-Ann said earlier, the Black community, we're too forgiving. And again, you look at situations like Eddie Long with that church. Those were, you know, founded allegations, what he did with those boys, and yet every Sunday people continue going to church. You look at R. Kelly, again, Black people, we have this way of compartmentalizing the negative aspects of public figures who benefit us in some manner. Same thing with the music industry. Oh, that's his private life. He's on the roster. He's number 2. He's making us money. Yeah, let him handle that.
Okay, so then why do you guys think that we're seeing a spike in the sales of his music after this documentary?
I mean, personally, I feel like the spike has to do with people trying to now go back and say, well, are there hints in the music? I mean, even Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. I mean, that for me, that was a big album.
Jammed to that.
You know, that was a huge album. That kind of, you know, obviously kickstarted Aaliyah's career, but it kickstarted Aaliyah for me. So now I'm going back and thinking, oh my goodness, listening to the lyrics of the song and like really
bad.
thinking
You feel
about
gross.
it. Right, and you're like, wow, wow, wow.
I feel like a dirty old man singing that song. And I think too, to Sue-Ann's point, I think Jada and some of those other people on social media got it wrong. I still believe in humanity. And I don't think that anyone is out throwing R. Kelly, let's celebrate parties. To your
Right.
point, I do think people are researching the lyrics because his songs are now like treasure maps to his sins.
Yes, little
And that's what the
crumbs.
documentary has told us.
Yeah.
Well, based on the endless memes that we're seeing online, do we think that we can separate the man from the music, or should we just mute R. Kelly altogether?
Mute altogether.
Yeah, I agree.
Mute altogether.
I think it's to the point where all these years we've had breadcrumbs. Little crumbs, little crumbs. Okay, he did this, he did that. There's this case here, there's this issue here. But the show, Surviving R. Kelly, put it all together in a bun, in a big loaf of bread.
And also,
and
too,
it's undeniable now.
And should fans be feeling a certain type
Yes,
of way?
they should cancel him. And here's the thing that I want to touch on and what Black women have been screaming for the longest, that they have no value in this country and we cannot prioritize the music over their value. Like, he did something horrendous to these women and our outrage for them should be greater than our desire to listen to his music.
Wow.
I
Wow.
agree.
Well, thanks both of you for coming by. We're going to continue to have this conversation about R. Kelly and so much more. Daily Flash will be right back.